Next, on a special edition of Currents News, a young woman is saying yes to God, but she's being blocked in fulfilling her vocation. She faces a challenge that confronts others. The details are next. And he was a 21st century teenager. Now he's on the path to sainthood. Learn why the Pope says the young man's life should be imitated. Soon, young people from around the globe will gather in Dublin to celebrate family life. They'll arrive in an Ireland where the faith is undergoing big changes. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Welcome to a special edition of Currents News, highlighting some of the best stories that put your faith in the news. Tonight, we begin with a Queens College student who wants to become a nun, but at the moment, she can't. The reason why is becoming increasingly common, and Currents News' Katie Engesser has that story.
Can we invite the Holy Spirit?
Oh, sure.
Okay, good. Come, Holy Spirit.
Norvelia Etienne's life, just like this interview, begins with prayer.
I knew the faith from a young age, and my grandmother was sure to teach me it.
Growing up on the shores of St. Lucia, Norvelia says God was a member of her family, and the idea of a religious life was something her grandmother, the matriarch, always wanted for one of her children.
My grandmother has wanted a religious in our family for about 40 years now. So she wanted my mom to become a religious, and thanks be to God, she isn't.
But Norvelia will be.
I remember sitting back one night after praying and saying, "Oh no, my grandmother has prayed me into being a nun."
Norvelia's calling came during the most secular time in her life, in the middle of college.
A Day in the Life of a Nun. I don't think I've seen that one.
She scoured YouTube, searching every vocation video, looking for a match.
Just this video popped up of the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of Apostles, and I was like, ooh, a new nun video. So I clicked on it.
Until one just sang out to her. And Norvelia found herself being called to a cloistered lifestyle.
What caught me was the peace, and I just knew that it felt like home.
Norvelia wants to join the Singing Sisters. Though they don't leave their monastery in Missouri, they topped the Billboard charts in 2014. But she has a problem, a big problem, worth $60,000.
I have student loans.
Many religious orders require candidates to be free from financial burdens before entering. That means Norvelia's debt delays her calling. According to studies, nearly half of individuals discerning religious life are barred from formation because of their student loans. It's a growing problem in the middle of a growing vocation crisis.
It's not that God isn't calling, it's just that people can't answer.
Norvelia is getting help from the Labouré Society, a nonprofit organization that helps those joining orders pay off their college debt.
And they sing everything in Latin.
They teach men and women how to fundraise ethically so they can devote their life to God.
I just want to enter. I just want to be Christ's. I just want to give my life to Him.
Norvelia is currently writing letters about her vocation story and hopes someone will donate. She has 6 months to raise $60,000. In Flushing, Katie Engesser, Currents News.
To help Norvelia get the latest edition of the tablet, inside the newspaper there's information on how you can donate to her cause. Plus, you'll be able to subscribe to the tablet and support the important work of Catholic media, reporting stories you won't find anywhere else. The Pope is approving the canonization of a teenager, a 19th century Italian who suffered much, but Nunzio Sulpizio never lost his trust in God. He's credited with 2 healing miracles. Nunzio will become a saint in October, and that's when the bishops of the world arrive in Rome for a major meeting concerning young people and the Catholic faith. A modern generation teenager who was very skilled in promoting the faith online is on the path to sainthood. The Pope has declared the young man's life a worthy example to imitate, and Cody Williams reports.
Sainthood is not reserved for elderly priests, popes, or mystics. It's also possible for 21st century teens like Carlo Acutis. This young Italian died of leukemia in 2006. He lived a short life, but left an impact.
Quando è morto, al suo funerale era pieno di
When he died, the funeral was full of poor people. Everyone wondered what they were doing there. It was because Carlo had secretly been helping them. The family knew because, as he was only 15, his mother was going with him. He brought them sleeping bags or food, and that's why they felt they needed to attend the funeral. Despite the growing pains, Carlo Acutis had an enviable reaction to them. The postulator for his cause explains the key was encountering the one person, Christ.
Non è nato santo, se l'è conquistato. La castità per lui è stata...
Carlo wasn't born a saint, but he worked hard at it. Chastity for him was a result of friendship with Christ. He understood, and that's what he told whoever met him, that to be faithful friends of Christ, one must meet certain demands. Naturally, this was difficult for him. It was difficult, but he passed the test with flexibility. His family and friends highlight his simplicity and capacity to pray in a not-so-Christian environment.
Io credo che sia una delle poche persone.
I think he was one of the few people capable of pushing his relatives and friends. In other words, his story is not one of a deeply Christian family in terms of practice. His family was normal. Yes, they went to Mass, but when they didn't, it was not a problem. Something else they highlight of Carlo was his passion for computers and the internet. In fact, he has become an example of a young person who is capable of making new technologies an instrument to talk about God. Carlo designed web pages dedicated to Eucharistic devotion in the Virgin Mary. Now, Pope Francis has declared him venerable, meaning he considers him as a public example to follow. In Rome, Cody Williams, Currents News.
The landmark celebration of young people in the Catholic faith is drawing near. Millions are expected to join Pope Francis in Panama for World Youth Day next January. Hoping to be part of the crowd, young parishioners from St. Bartholomew's Church in Queens. To afford the trip, they staged a walkathon from Elmhurst to St. Patrick's Cathedral. They had a second goal: deliver prayer intentions to the cathedral's altar. Pope Francis will be in Ireland later this month for the World Meeting of Families, just as he was 3 years ago for the gathering in Philadelphia. Now he's going to Dublin, and New York's Pope station, Net TV, will televise special live coverage of the journey. Be sure to join us for all the festivities beginning on Monday, August 20th, and continuing through the Holy Father's time in Ireland. The pontiff will be on the Emerald Isle at a troubling time for the Irish Church. Votes to legalize abortion and same-sex marriage combined with declining church attendance have raised many questions. Melissa Butts reports that Father Gerard Whelan, an Irish Jesuit and university professor, believes the Pope's trip could make a big difference.
In recent times, then, the decisions that we Catholics would really regret, such as the referendum on same-sex marriage, the abortion referendum recently, they all have the background of Irish people wanting to assert their adult individuality over against a Catholic Church that had a control of social mores in a particular way.
In a 2016 census, 78% of people identified as Catholic and less than half practiced weekly. Despite these numbers, he said shock is still the reaction to the most recent referendum, legalizing abortion.
The immediate effect of this abortion referendum is one of shock on all practicing Catholics, I think, are certainly the bishops, priests, my fellow Jesuits. Did not expect that the vote would be so emphatically in favour of abortion as it was.
Yet with the Pope coming to Ireland in August for the World Meeting of Families, this Jesuit professor says many are feeling one emotion for the upcoming visit: awkwardness.
So we are in a state of some disarray in the Catholic Church in Ireland, even in these months after the abortion referendum. So there's an awkwardness to hosting this international meeting on families and hosting the Pope. The Pope knows perfectly well that this is a frontier situation of cultural change in Ireland, of decline of the Catholic Church in various ways. He's perfectly happy just to launch into such a situation and to do what he can.
The Pope's presence alone can ignite excitement and help evangelize works, ideas, and values for the long term. Thus, instead of reprimanding the Irish citizens, as was done in the past, the Holy Father might address broader cultural and family values that he so often speaks about. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Americans' belief in God is strong, but church attendance is less so. New findings show nearly 9 out of 10 Americans say they do believe in God, but only about 4 of them go to church regularly. According to Pew Research Center, many choose not to attend religious services because of practical or personal reasons and not because of a lack of faith. Churchgoers told the researchers why they attend. 81% cite being closer to God. 69% want to give their children a strong moral foundation, and 68% hope to become a better person. Fewer people in the pews is why many churches are forced to shut their doors, leading to a big dilemma: how to properly handle buildings that are churches no more. The Vatican is taking new steps to address the many issues involved. Faith and culture correspondent for Crux, Claire Jean-Gravé, joined me from Rome to talk about what could happen next. Claire, you are on top of this story. I got to know from you, what steps are being planned by the Holy See to ensure that these buildings do maintain some spiritual value?
Well, hi, Liz. First of all, the Vatican is bringing together a whole team that's comprised of the Pontifical Council for Culture, the Italian Bishops' Conference, and the Gregorian University in Rome to come together in order to offer guidelines in collaboration from countries from all over the world that are concerned about their beautiful churches and what is going to happen to them, and provide just opportunities for other people who are facing these problems to understand, how do you treat a place that is no longer the house of God? That's really the question.
Claire, let's look at the sheer scope of this. Where is the issue most prominent? Because there are more than 100,000 churches in Italy alone.
Yes, there's a constellation of churches in Rome. About 65,000 are still in the hands of the Vatican. That's a lot to take care of. And if you consider that some are broken down, run down, secularization, leading to a lot of people not only not coming to the pews, but also priests who are not there to take care of it and take care of the upkeeping of some of these churches that have all the patronage of the arts that we are so fond of and that we're so proud of as Catholics. So obviously this represents a big challenge in Italy, and that's why the Italian Bishops' Conference has a special role to play.
And there are some complexities to the issue, correct? What are some of the questions that the church must wrestle with in deciding how to handle underutilized churches?
Well, listen, churches are beautiful spaces. They're gorgeous, high vaulted, complex, and sometimes it's just really hard to take care of. In those occasions, privates come in and they buy the property, especially if a diocese is struggling financially. That means that you have to find a way to communicate with private entities and make sure that this place still is respected and treated as it's supposed to. And this is what the guidelines are really trying to offer.
I'm going to put some perspective to this, Claire, and hopefully you can help me. Given the massive scope of Catholic properties around the world, does the Vatican have an exact number of struggling or abandoned churches?
Unfortunately, it's very hard for the Vatican to keep track of the large number of properties that it holds, but Nunzio Galantino, the recently made cardinal by Pope Francis, former head of the Italian Bishop Conference, and now leader of OPSA, which takes care of the Vatican treasuries, is the man who's on the job for this. So if there's one guy who's going to have the opportunity to look at the paperwork and know those numbers, that's him, that's Galantino.
Many of these buildings are adorned with magnificent artwork. How will these treasures be preserved?
Well, of course, conversation with private entities is very important, but one thing that led to hope for these spokesmen for the Vatican was that lay people should be involved in trying to save their patronage and trying to save their traditions and culture. So getting lay people on board is always a track to success for the Vatican on many, many issues.
Oh, Claire, thank you so much for putting this in perspective. I really appreciate your insight as always, and we'll be looking to hear more from you about this particular case. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's a lot more news headed your way on this special edition of Currents News. Some are calling it a modern-day miracle. A plane crashes and everyone survives. They're sowing seeds after migrating to a new home. See the new project taking place in the Vatican's backyard. He's been by the side of 6 different popes, and now he's stepping in front of the camera. The Holy See's photographer speaks about 55 years of service. Welcome back to this special edition of Currents News. Right after takeoff, an airliner carrying more than 100 people slammed into the ground in Mexico. A priest from Chicago was on board. Leila Santiago heard from him along with other passengers and has video of the moments just before and after the crash.
Seconds after takeoff, impact, screams, and panic as passengers shifted into survival mode to escape the flames and the smoke of the fallen plane in Durango, Mexico. All 103 people aboard Aeromexico Flight 2431 survived.
I've always been the type of person to say, never take your life for granted, life goes by too fast, but I'd never had a reason to say it until now.
Ashley Garcia was the one to capture it all on her cell phone. She was one of at least 65 U.S. citizens on board. Garcia lives in Chicago and decided to get video of the plane taking off after noting the rain and the clouds coming her way.
We were not even in the air for like 5 seconds when the wind just pushed us right back down, and we kind of were just bouncing up and hitting each other. And then as soon as the plane, one of the wings hit the ground, that's when it caught on fire.
It was basically just a mad dash for the door as people were trying to escape.
Al Herrero, a passenger who also lives in Chicago, immediately turned to those who needed help getting out, including the elderly.
My injuries were very, very small compared to others with broken hands and broken noses. There was a lot of blood everywhere. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate.
Once off the plane, he says he joined a priest who was on board in prayer, Father Ezequiel Sanchez, director of the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Chicago. Just hours before surgery for his injured arm, he was still counting blessings and giving thanks. The idea that nobody died, he says.
But I would consider that a miracle.
State officials have pointed at bad weather as a possible factor. Strong wind gusts knocked the plane down. Images of the accident show the plane remained mostly intact. Investigators have recovered black boxes, recorders critical to understanding exactly what happened. Mexico's government established a commission to investigate, but have already acknowledged that it could take months before questions are answered. In the meantime, it is the voices of the survivors who are giving a better understanding. Ashley, who was there to celebrate a wedding. Al, to celebrate a baptism. Father Sanchez, his birthday. Now they all celebrate what they call a miracle. Leila Santiago, Mexico City.
A new project to help migrants is taking place right in the Vatican's backyard. The refugees grow fruits, flowers, and themselves. Cody Williams tells us how.
These refugees have found a land of opportunity right in the backyard of the Congregation of the Mission in Rome. Since March, they've been growing produce and flowers here as part of the Mediterranea project, a Vincentian initiative seeking to also cultivate something intangible, integration. We've created a beautiful atmosphere, one of friendship and collaboration among everyone. It's a professional environment, but also one in which we've built strong bonds. I'm happy because I'm working now. I'm healthy and safe, and there are no longer any problems. I can't go back to my country, so I obviously would prefer to stay here. I work with my friends here. Even though we're from different nations in Africa, we've learned so much together. After harvest in September, this organic output will go on sale at floriculture exhibitions and farmers markets. Additional products, such as jams and flavored salts and sugars, will be available for order online. Profits will be divided equally among the workers, with the hope they'll become financially autonomous. This promise of a steady job and cultural assimilation inspires each one of these refugees, some of whom make hours-long commutes on public transportation every day.
I pray that the project will go more further and in future so that we can become something better in Italy. I think in future I will know how to do more things, so it will make me go well in future to help my children.
In this space brimming with potential, the plants and flowers aren't the only ones doing the growing. In Rome, Cody Williams, Currents News.
And still to come on this special edition of Currents News, he started taking pictures of popes when he was 16 years old. Now he's taking center stage, the Vatican photographer on the lessons he's learned. We'll be right back. More now on this special edition of Currents News. He's been at the side of 6 different popes, taking their photographs at the most historic moments of their papacies. Melissa Butts reports that while Arturo Madi admired each of the Holy Fathers he served, one holds a special place in his heart.
His story is one of strength, dedication, and sacrifice. Arturo Madi was only 16 when he began as Vatican photographer on March 9, 1956. He would go on to give 55 years of his life to immortalizing the most important moments of 6 different popes. From John the 23rd to Benedict the 16th, he froze those moments in time. His most special relationship, though, was with John Paul II, with whom he became friends during the Second Vatican Council. Neither of the two imagined one would end up being Pope, and the other would be the first to photograph him after the white smoke.
From one minute to the next, we see the white smoke. Habemus papum. People were asking, is he African? I screamed. It was him. I almost had a heart attack. I was so happy. I was outside the Sistine Chapel, and they opened the door. I was going to go in when I saw him a few feet away. He looked at me, he smiled, and then he went like, look how I'm dressed. He hugged me, he blessed me, and I hurried off to work.
From then on, Arturo was John Paul II's shadow. He didn't miss a single day of work, despite having 5 vacation days a year. This allowed both men to get to know each other so well that their relationship became almost father-son-like.
For 27 years, from the first to the last day, I was there with him. I can say he treated me like a son. I saw him as a father. He had time to ask me how I was, if everything was going well at home with my wife. He spoke with my wife 3 times, and I still don't know what he told her. Whenever I ask her, she says, it's not your business.
These 27 years by the Pope's side were filled with moments he would remember for the rest of his life. Mauri assures the most difficult and beautiful at the same time was the day they bid farewell. The Pope called for him to visit him in his room.
They told him, Holy Father, Arturo is here. He was in his bed and slowly turned over. When I saw him, my heart leapt. He had a smile, eyes I hadn't seen in months. It moved me so much that I knelt before him. He caressed my head and blessed my hands for a few moments. At the end, he told me, Arturo, thank you, thank you.
Mauri attributes luck to the success of some of his photos, assuring it was being in the right place at the right time. He says there's only one key to so many years of work: humility. It's a lesson he learned from John Paul II.
As a photographer, the big secret is entering into the charisma with the person you have in front of you. If you don't feel it, you'll never do it well.
Madi has kept each one of the cameras that have accompanied him throughout life, even one that saved his life during a riot in Bogota. His job allowed him to get to know John Paul II better than anyone. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. And I hope to see you again next time.